You know, I spent yesterday morning sitting and talking with one of our littlest disciples, Zane, as we prepared for his first communion next Sunday. And we talked together in one of Daniel Erlander's books. We talked together about the crabby people, didn't we, Zane? Right? Who didn't like that Jesus was spending time with the least, the lost, the last, and the little. The crabby people who eventually put Jesus on the cross in order to get rid of him. With common criminals who were on his left and on his right, by the way. And we talked about how shocked those crabby people were that even after his resurrection and after his ascension, Jesus seemed to be everywhere in the lives and in the actions of those who followed his way. That is the promise, isn't it, of the Lord's Supper. That through bread and through wine, Jesus' real presence is with us and in us to give us strength for the hodos, to give us strength for the journey. And we need that promise, don't we? Because the road of downward mobility is difficult, isn't it? It means change and it means sacrifice. Things that we're not too overly fond of. Following the way of Jesus often feels like failure. It feels like we're headed down a one-way street that ends in a cul-de-sac. When in reality, there is a side street that we have difficulty seeing until we've reached the end and are forced to turn and to look and see God provides a new way. My friends, the way of Jesus is not easy. And we know this. We have been struggling to walk this road here at Gloria Day as we've experienced the loss of a pastor and changes to our religious practices, the decline of attendance in mainline Christian churches, and the heartbreak of members and friends choosing new places to worship. It all seems like too much at times, doesn't it? I know I sometimes feel overwhelmed by it all. But then I remember that we, you and I, are called to be people of the way. We are not called to stand still or to stay in one place, no matter how difficult the way may seem. But we know that we have God's Spirit to sustain us, as well as a promise that in the end, it is not up to us, because it is not about us. It is about God. And that should give us hope. Because as we heard last week, with God, all things are possible. We then have to simply accept that we are loved by God, scars and all, and that we are called to be reflections of God, reflections of Christ in the world, scars and all, so that we might make Christ manifest in the world, so that we might build a city of God, as we will sing in a few moments, a city that is constantly growing and changing, rising and falling, as it invites the lost and the broken to come and find rest. A city that turns tears into dancing. A city that is not a place, but rather a people. A people of hope. In closing this morning, I share with you an experience that I had while on vacation last week. You see, I heard that they had changed a ride at Disneyland. A ride that was a favorite of my mother's and a symbol of all that Disneyland, I think, represents. It was first introduced as a ride at the 1964-65 World's Fair in New York. It was an attraction that was designed to honor the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF. And it was centered on the simple but profound idea that the children of the world have a better understanding of what we share in common as human beings than we do as adults. And that it is possible for them to create a harmonious future for the world. I'm sure you can guess which ride that I am referring to. It has a wonderful, if a bit repetitive, musical melody that accompanies it, doesn't it? And one that captures the hope of its idea. It's a world of laughter, a world of tears. It's a world of hopes and a world of fears. There's so much that we share that it's time we're aware. It's a what? It's a small world, after all. Now you can see how I might be afraid that any change to this ride and its simple, basic message, which has been sung to children for more than 4 decades, might lose the sense of hopefulness that the ride seems to convey. I am pleased to say that the changes, which are mostly updates, adding Disney characters in the same artistic style and in their appropriate cultural settings, only enhances the experience for a new generation of children, and maybe even for an older generation of children as well. Because you see, both Delaney and I found it so moving that we wanted to write it a second time through, didn't we, Delaney? Brothers and sisters, may you feel the hope, despite any difficulties or changes that may come along the way. May you feel the hope that comes from following Jesus. And may that hope sustain you and encourage you to stay on the line, to go deeper in your walk with Christ, so that you may be blessed, and more importantly, be a blessing, a reflection of God's grace in this small